because I'm sure that he was black. I just love black Jesus.
Have any of y'all seen the Book of Clarence?
Saw the movie, and I was not nearly as offended by the film as I was expecting.
But you know, Jesus came from the hood. All those stories, they're hood stories, right?
Yeah.
And these people were poor. Right? They weren't living in Palestine.
I had a couple of friends reach out to me. Armand, you should go see this. You should go see this movie. I wanted to make my own judgment, and let me tell y'all, I was pleasantly surprised. It is not a reworking of a Bible story. It was a tasteful depiction of black people set during that time.
Like, why are we doing a movie where, in one scene, guys are smoking weed, floating upside down, and a light bulb pops up above their head, and in another scene, we're crucifying someone with dramatic music playing? It's an odd mix.
What palace?
Exactly, right? It was Torah in
No, he's poor.
Right?
And he cared about the poor.
And he cared about the poor. All of those people were poor, right?
It was more heretical than it was blasphemous, which was kind of a pleasant surprise in a very odd sense.
It was funny, but there was nothing in the story that made me say, yeah, this is blasphemous. Nothing.
And so I wanted to tell a story. I was fascinated for decades with being able to tell a story about my environment that I grew up in, but transposing it to the Bible days and showing how similar those times are to these, and show how little has changed.
So let's get the good stuff out of the way. It's shot well, the cinematography is great, the acting is good, the score is pretty good, the costume design, set design, all of it's really good. It was decent. I enjoyed the aspects of this movie that were just the movie, but the content is where it got me. So the guys in the clips that we saw before make claims like they didn't know what to think about it. They just loved seeing black Jesus and it wasn't blasphemous. The Bible, despite what a lot of people will have you believe, does not tell you what Jesus looks like. That's a fact. What people are doing is misquoting Revelation chapter 1, as seen on the screen here. As you can see, it does not describe Jesus as a black man. Having skin that shines like burning bronze made to glow in a furnace does not mean that he's my complexion. Having his hair as white as wool does not mean as coarse or as thick as wool. These are lies that people put into the Bible but cannot read out of the Bible. All we know about Jesus, as far as his physical description, is that he looked like everyone else. We know this movie isn't grounded in history, but it does make itself out to be a religious satire. So what religion are we looking at? At first glance, it seems to be Christianity, but a deeper look shows that it can't be, because nowhere in the Bible does it talk about Jesus as a child bringing clay pigeons to life. But there are books that do that. We first find this in the infancy Gospel of Thomas, later in the Quran. So, what religion are we looking at? A Gnostic religion or Islam? Well, what we're actually looking at is the Islamic Jesus. We know this not only because of the clay pigeon scene, but because Clarence is the replacement for Jesus on the cross. This is a very popular theory in Islam because of this text. So one of the questions you might be asking yourself is, why the Muslim Jesus instead of the real Jesus? Well, the answer to that question requires a little bit of history.
Story time.
The director of this movie has adopted the Nation of Gods and Earth ideology, better known as the 5%ers. A little insight as to what they believe is that 85% of society is sheep that doesn't know they're harming everyone else, 10% is running everything, and 5% is the enlightened. So there's that. There's also some stuff about Jacob being a big head scientist, and I don't know where they get that from, but that's part of it. You would probably best know them by the influences they've had in hip hop. If you've ever heard language like,
You know, Buzz had to come see you guys. It's good to see you guys.
then you know what I'm saying. Yes, this movie is blasphemous. It's blasphemous because it misrepresents the Christian God, who is Jesus. And if you lie on God or offend God, that's a form of blasphemy. The Jesus in this movie is originally seen in the infancy gospel of Thomas, later used in the Quran. We know this because of the scene in the movie where he brings the clay pigeons to life. The problem with this is that Jesus is also a murderer. So God can't murder because of his position, and Jesus has never, ever committed a sin. You could call these hood stories, but they're only hood stories because they take place in the hood. Sometimes. The scenery in the Bible changes quite often. They take place among commoners. So if you think the hood is where the common people are, okay. But the reality is, the gospel is the good news. When you think of a hood story, what you think of is sinners thriving in sin. That's not what the gospel is. The gospel is that even though you are sinners, there's a Savior coming to help and pull you out of your sin and wash you clean of your sin. And had this movie given the actual gospel, I wouldn't have minded. Honestly, as I was watching it, I was really hoping Clarence was going to be the thief on the cross that gave his life to Jesus. But as I watched it and saw him carry his cross, I realized what the movie was. And I was just really hoping the whole time that I was wrong. Now, the motives of this director are very clear in this clip. He just wanted to show you exactly what he showed you.
And so I wanted to tell a story. I was fascinated for decades with being able to tell a story about my environment that I grew up in, but transposing it to the Bible days and showing how similar those times are to these, and to show how little has changed.
Unfortunately, that's not historically accurate. The times they are changing. With that being said, there's nothing new under the sun as far as our heart's desire. We still sin the same exact way, but the culture is totally different. The culture from 10 years ago is different than the way it is today. From 100 years ago, it's totally different. So over 2,000 years ago, you want to say that the hood culture is the same? No, they weren't walking around selling weed out of cloth sacks. That's not a thing, and you won't find that. Thanks for watching the video, guys. Don't forget to leave a like and a comment. I really want to know what you think. I'm trying new stuff on these videos, so some feedback would be awesome. Let me know what you thought of this video, the movie, if you've seen it, if you're planning on seeing it, if you're now not going to go see it. Just, let me know something. All praise and faith to His amazing grace. Continue to pray for me as I pray for you. And remember to wear the armor.